Hello. So I'm out here and I'm going on my walk, and I wanted to come and share a message. And it's so funny because I haven't done this in a very long time in terms of just going on my walks and sharing thoughts that come to my mind. But I had a thought when I was inside, and it's actually based off of a video that I watched from Professor Melanie, I think is her name. And if I'm wrong about that, then I will look it up and correct myself. But she's a teacher, a spiritual teacher here on YouTube, and she was talking about the split that's happening, which I'm sure many of us feel because it is a collective energy. But she was putting it into, she was describing it very well. She was breaking it down. She was delivering messages that she's received. And she was talking about the word conscious versus unconscious versus subconscious. And I had not heard her, I didn't know a lot about those terms and what they actually meant in terms of what the language actually meant. When it, like, ancestrally, cosmically, what those meanings actually were versus how they're being used today. And it was really interesting. It was really good to know. And I wanted to talk about losing consciousness, because that is something that I feel I am at a point where that's what's happening. And it's interesting because I feel like my life very heavily mirrors my nephew's. He's in his terrible twos right now, and they truly are terrible for him sometimes. He's like really going through it. And I was thinking about why he's struggling so much, and the fact that his experience is a gaining of consciousness versus mine being a losing of consciousness right now. Okay, and so how she described consciousness versus unconscious versus subconscious. So she said consciousness is what happens when you come to this planet and you're here for a long enough time that you start to pick up things about what it is to exist in a 3D world, in, this system that we have here on Earth. All of the little regimens, the different perspectives that we have about what's good and bad and what is, what should be, all of those things that build your reality. That's you gaining consciousness. It's just an awareness of what it is to function in this world, how to function in this world. How, meaning how to do it successfully meaning be in the system and make it work for you, whatever that really means. By make it work for you, probably just, not kill you or not have you being on the outside. Though it's becoming more of a thing to recognize that being on the outside isn't so bad after all. Though, there's levels to it, because I have a certain privilege, I'm entering into the outside, and I've always been on the outside in certain ways, but I'm not on the outside in the same way that somebody who visibly shows, who visibly presents with a mental health struggle, what they call a struggle or what they call an illness, but is really just another way of existing in the world, but is not seen as normal. They exist on the outside in a way that can be harmful to their life because of the system that we have and the way that it doesn't acknowledge the humanity in their experience and the normalness of their experience. It's just as human as anything else, but it's seen as a deficiency because our system is deficient in being able to take care of them and protect them and teach them how to manage their gifts, honestly, and build boundaries, healthy boundaries around their relationship with the spiritual world and spiritual realms while they're in the 3D. So it makes it very complicated to exist that way in this system, and when you can't hide it because you visibly present, it makes life even harder. And so then you end up being a victim of systems like the mental health institutions and all of that. So anyways, so consciousness is existing in this world, knowing how to exist in this world, all of that. The unconscious, she was saying, is kind of similar to the internal, which she also said or described as the divine feminine. And she said, I don't really exactly remember what she said. And then the subconscious is where you really are, where your soul is, who you really are. They don't really care about what's happening right here. It's understanding just how much you exist in multiple states, how vast you are, and the fact that there is a whole other side of you, whole being of you that is in a completely different experience. One that has nothing to do with Earth, one that has nothing to do with being alive, and doesn't care about what's happening here because they're not really affected. And that's the subconscious, I think she said. So it's subconscious, unconscious, and conscious, and the unconscious is the link between the subconscious and the conscious. And so yeah, as you get older, the more you live in this world, the more you gain consciousness. And she's talking about how it's actually, we're trying to now go back. And your subconscious is always kind of there, kind of trying to remind you that you're a spirit, you're a soul, you are more than just who you are in this lifetime. And that's always trying to pull you back. And when you're a kid, it's more visible and it's more recognizable. You're able to talk to it and relate to it a lot more. But the older you get, the more you dim these things in order to really protect yourself. It is creating a boundary that is necessary in order to operate as a human being. But once you get old enough to be able to handle fully engaging in both energies, that's when it's time to make that return. And I'm thinking as we progress as a world, kids probably won't have to dim that energy so much because we'll have systems that actually support the subconscious existing on Earth more openly, like it did in Lemuria. This is nothing new. We've just gone through a cycle, right? So go through walking away from it in order to go back. It's kind of like the experience of any immigrant. Any immigrant who's been affected by colonialism, you have to leave your country to go somewhere else, to gain the opportunities that you need to come back eventually and bring, your people what they need in order to survive in an ever-changing world where, there are certain hierarchies and dominance. And we see that happening with a lot of immigrants coming from different places, but from my experience, I'm South African and Jamaican. So there's a lot of people who have come here, like my grandparents came from Jamaica here for a better life for their kids. On my South African side, my grandparents came to Canada seeking political asylum because of apartheid. And now, here comes my generation, and I'm ready to go back. I'm trying to leave Canada and go back to where my people in this life are from, my ancestors are from, and try and get back to those communities and build them up and overall create better systems and better communities for us and take the good that I've learned here and also understand what went wrong here and try and make sure that we can do it better. Building, our new worlds and things like that. But none of this is new because we've already been in this state of being more heavily in the subconscious or having more of the subconscious come in to the point where it's balanced with Lemuria. So yeah, this is nothing new, but this is exciting because it's new in the sense that it's a new level we're accessing. We're never going to be in Lemuria again, but we are going to begin to understand that state a lot more because we're going to be living in it more heavily. So I wanted to talk about losing consciousness because that's what's happening for me. And it was really cool to listen to her speak about that because I began to be able to give words to my experience a little bit more. And I was thinking about it today because I've recently uncovered a passion of mine that I really, really enjoy, which is music production. I really enjoy producing music. I guess you could say, being a composer. I've been making music all month long, and I've just kind of fully dived in. And I've been sharing my music only with my family, so with my mom and my sisters. And I noticed pretty quickly that, my instrumentals that people enjoy those. But I also noticed that there is I feel a bit of a pressure to just make the instrumentals and not add my own voice into it, like my singing voice and my writing. I love to sing. I love to write music, write songs, lyrics. But what would appear to be the most financially lucrative for me, and what would make sense if I was really operating in this system in the way that the world works right now, is to just put my instrumentals out and allow people to collaborate with them, people who have a better singing voice, and so I've been feeling that pressure, and I've been wondering if I'm actually going to do that, because I don't really want to, but I have also, thought about whether this could be a financially lucrative thing for me, something to give me financial stability and financial freedom. And I'm wondering what the best course of action for that is. But yesterday I had an experience where I found this song that I really liked, and then I found out she was doing a remix competition for the song. So I was working with the song and remixing it. And it was the first time that I had not really enjoyed music composition. And it was working with somebody else's vocals and like somebody else's vision for the song, and I was just doing the remix. So there was already kind of a set path with that. And I think it kind of confirmed to me something that I maybe kind of knew underneath it all, but I was okay with the idea of just kind of ignoring it and giving it up. Which is that I want my music to be my music. I want to write songs to my instrumentals. I want to sing on my songs. I don't want to just be the beat producer. And admitting that is hard, because I don't have the best voice in the world. And I'm sure that there are other ways that people envision my music in a way that might be more lucrative and might leave more space for me to be successful just as a music producer, versus if I take my music and truly use it as my art form in terms of writing to it and singing to it as well. But I think that part of the whole idea of losing consciousness and opening up to your true self is not giving away the parts of yourself that feel like they'll be most, like they are just not convenient to your success in this world. Like, not giving away what feels like it's disposable, because it's not the best of you, or it's not considered the best by other people, and holding to what you love to do. I don't just love to create beats. I love to make music in the full sense. I like to write, I like to sing on my music. It's a part of the creation of the song itself. It's a part of the instrumental, I guess. And for me, my voice is just as much a part of that instrumental, whether it's the most beautiful voice or not. And having to come to terms with that is a little scary, because I do recognize that I could be missing out on opportunities to create success for myself by not opening up my music to just being the beats, and not opening up myself as an artist to just being a beat maker, and not just keeping my own versions of my songs to myself. Putting my songs out with my voice on them is a risk, because, I hate to say it like this, but it could depreciate the value, right? Because maybe my voice takes away from somebody else being able to use it in a way that they want to use it. But part of reclaiming your position as an artist and your freedom as an artist, your sovereignty, is about making your art the way that you want to make it, not the way that is going to work best for you financially, or is going to work best for you in terms of getting recognition and working in the artist communities, because art has become a business in a way that is it just goes completely against how creativity is supposed to work, or not supposed to, but in the way that it works for a lot of people I've seen. Art is suffering because people aren't being able to be creative in the ways that they need to. They're being put in boxes. And that sets us all back. And so part of that losing of consciousness is about trying to decide which way I want to go. Part of the whole losing consciousness conversation is giving up the things that that you are aware of that could put you in a good position, but ultimately steal from your soul, steal from your joy. And part of that would be just positioning myself as a music producer and not using my singing voice, not using my lyrics, the songs that I like to write. I'm a songwriter. Before I was producing music, I was writing songs to other people's beats, and I was very happy with that. And now that I know I can make music too, it's very exciting. But I don't want to lose a huge part of myself just because I see the financial abundance possible in just being a producer, in being less of myself, in making myself smaller. And I've been getting a lot of messages around not making myself smaller, but I wasn't sure what they were talking about until now, when I really started to think about it, and I recognized that, not being my full self as an artist and only putting out my instrumentals, not singing, would be taking away from myself and taking away from my creativity, which I don't want to do. And that's hard, though. That is difficult because it really takes seeing yourself as enough, as more than enough, and seeing all of your gifts as equal and not championing one over the other, which can be hard if you're trying to make money from these gifts that you have when it comes to being a creative. So that's something that I'm dealing with, and it's like I was thinking about this experience and the grief that comes along with freedom being choice. I have a choice here to make, and I guess it's a bit of grief because I recognize the ways in which I really am still learning to see myself as enough, because it's a hard decision to make, to even choose to let myself sing on my songs, because I recognize the fact that it might make them less appreciated. But choosing to ignore that or not go based off of that, it's not like a super swift decision, or it wasn't until I fully understood, which was literally today and a little bit of last night. But up until then, I was really considering just, making beats and not singing on them. And I would hear my singing voice on the songs where I was on them, and I would feel embarrassed or cringe. I would find it cringy, whatever that means. And it was ridiculous because when I think about the process of making those songs, I'm always having so much fun when I'm singing on them, and I'm coming up with melodies and words, and I'm getting to put my lyrics to the music. I have so much fun. And it's the listening back, where all the voices start to seep in, and it's like, is this good? What is good? And do you have enough talent for this? And all of that just comes in and fucks everything up. And it's a total soul crusher for an artist. And so I'm really battling that and choosing to not give in to the desire to be smaller, because I feel that, or I might have thought that smallness was more acceptable or was just overall better than being my full self. So that's what's going on right now in the battle of losing consciousness. And I'm excited to be losing consciousness because I don't want it anymore, and the thing about Earth is I think consciousness comes in. I think it came in originally as a protective shield because we weren't always this way on this planet, We were hunters and gatherers. We were living a very different life. A life with a lot less comfort and a life with a lot less easy access and mobility. And so consciousness had to come in and rein us all in together and create these communities where you followed one way and you stayed on a path that was beaten because that assured survival. But now we're in a very different world, and yet we still had that same consciousness that comes from our ancient ancestors who were dealing with a much different experience of survival. And that totally affects us now in how we express ourselves and how much of an individual we are willing to be, how creative we're willing to be, how out of the box you're willing to go, how much you're able to allow your thoughts to divert from the norm, And we saw that with COVID and, with vaccines, and where, whether you got a vaccine or not became a moral issue because we had one train of thinking, and it was very hard to accept that somebody could not want a vaccine and also not be a racist or ableist or, just a horrible person, that there are many reasons for not wanting this, and that there are many reasons for wanting it that go beyond just wanting to protect people. We just saw like a herd mentality develop, and I used to live in the States, so herd mentality is nothing new. That's a huge thing in the political world there. And I'd say it's actually pretty big here in Canada too. Canada just expresses it differently. But yeah, we saw that be a big problem, and it was really hard to watch because it woke me up, I think, to the fact that I'm now in this gray space when it comes to I just don't feel connected to the politics that I used to align myself to before in terms of the naming and the grouping, with leftists and blah, 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 because of the way that I see that it's so fragile in its base and that it's not actually attached to anything genuine. It's attached to an idea of being a good person. But in actuality, when it requires you to truly stand up and defend people who are being marginalized and are going against the grain, all of that gets lost under the fear of being seen as immoral or unethical. And so then you never really had any ethics in the first place, or your ethics were wimpy. And so, yeah, but that's not everybody who I don't know. These conversations are kind of messy, and so I get scared to talk about them. But I had a few outbursts online about it because it was just so interesting to see how people were describing people based off of their vaccines. And it was like, this is horrible. This is not great. But anyways, I don't want to talk about that. What I wanted to talk about was the grief that comes with losing consciousness and gaining consciousness. So right now, my nephew, he's 2 and he just turned 2, and he is gaining consciousness, right? He's beginning to understand the world that he's stepped into. He's understanding the rules, the systems in place. He's understanding that certain things are going to have to be dulled about his experience, about his subconscious, in order to be more in this place. And there's a lot of grief that comes with that. So I think that's why the 2s are so terrible. The 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s. I think it's because kids are going through a huge amount of loss in their world, in their experience of this planet. You think you're coming here and you're going to get to have it, one way with things in more balance and still have connections to the ancestors and all of these other things about our world, about our universe that we don't get to see so openly. And then you begin to realize that because of the systems that we have right now, these things are going to have to go. And I'm sure that their ancestors are telling them that and slowly slipping away in very open visibility. And that's probably very hard. I don't really even remember my early childhood, and I don't remember, seeing anything or anything like that, but I do remember being a lot more creative and a lot more just openly weird and expressive, and I'm getting back to that now. And some of it I didn't lose. Most of it I actually did keep, but it became very internal, and I'm just now getting to the point where I'm comfortable being open with it again. But yeah, so that's the grief that comes with gaining consciousness. And now I'm at a state now for the past few years where I've been losing it, getting rid of it, shedding it. It's very hard to unlearn. And just as hard as it is to unlearn, systemic things like bias and all of these things, it's hard to unlearn consciousness. It's an active choice that you have to make every day, and it takes a lot of work. And it gets into these minute things like when it comes to being an artist, how much of yourself are you going to truly be, and the idea of editing yourself down. What is editing that is necessary and what is editing that you're doing because you need to conform in order, or you feel that you need to conform in order to live a sustainable life. You feel that your art is only good enough if it comes in pieces. All of that and fighting that is about losing consciousness. And it's the battle that I'm in. And I was talking yesterday about the grief that I'm experiencing with losing consciousness that just comes from, not being in control or not feeling like I'm in control anymore. And that grief comes with the fact that I just don't know. And I didn't know before, but I felt like I did more than I do now. Sorry. And there's a lot of freedom that comes with not knowing anymore. Or just acknowledging openly that you don't know, that you never knew. But there's a lot of fear too. Because I'm still living in a world that is not truly reflecting my internal truth, my knowing, my deep knowing, So I'm still battling systems of capitalism, and financial stuff is really what weighs on me heavily these days because I'm an adult now and I don't want to have to rely on my family for so long. And not because there's anything wrong with that, but literally only because everybody's dealing with capitalism. Everybody's struggling financially, and it feels like a cost, like me not just going out and finding a job that will make me money and get me to a stable point. Not doing that feels selfish because it feels that it's taking away from my family and their ability to provide a better life for themselves individually. And that is a hard burden to have on your back and to actively choose. It's not that I'm choosing not to do anything about it, but it feels like I'm not doing anything about it because I'm not just going out and finding, a regular job. And that's very hard because it feels selfish. And in fact, I know it's not. I know I'm not just sitting on my butt and not doing anything. I know that I'm actively trying to create so that I can also give back to all of the people who have helped me. But when nothing, or when not enough, or what seems to be not enough is being produced in order to really give back and have it show in the physical, it's hard because it's really all based on faith and all based on trust. And faith and trust is, it's irreplaceable. It's so important and it's so rich. But right now, it's not showing in the physical. That's kind of hard. So there's kind of a daily grief that comes with losing consciousness, because you're battling shame and feelings of selfishness and worthlessness. But you have to fight it and just remember that this is just like, it's like a detox, you know? And I, like, my whole body, I've been going through battling all this, like a cough and stuffed nose, and now I've had acne and got like a little bump right on my third eye, which I think is funny. And I think it's just like all of these toxins are being released, all of this sickness that was in my body that came from not necessarily consciousness, but just from an unhealthy level of consciousness, an unbalanced consciousness, a consciousness that had been warped and manipulated and weaponized against the self, against the many selves. All of that is coming out, and it's right at the surface, so I'm really feeling it, and so my body's really feeling it. And I'm just trying to continue to fight it and be positive, and let myself be negative when I need to. Let myself be in the balance of it all. And it's working, I think. So, yeah, I guess I just wanted to come on and share my thoughts about that. And that's really it. Just taking a walk, because I'm trying to walk every day. And yeah, so that's all. Bye. Hi. So I also just wanted to come on here and talk a little bit about the whole conversation with vaccines. And it kind of goes into the same thing with like crystals and spiritual attacks, but not in a way that fully covers everything. This is not a full blanket statement. This is just my perspective and what I know right now based off of my personal experience, because I don't know everything. So I don't want to give any full blanket statements like this is the truth. But anyways, I had a different experience. So I have my vaccines. I have 3. I only really needed 2, or wanted 2, and I got the 3rd because I was just going with my sister. But yeah, I have 3. And what I've noticed in the spiritual community is kind of, in some ways, a little similar to what happened in the communities that were pro-vaccine. And it's a little bit of judgment and a lot of, if you didn't get it, you're better. In the same way that the people who got the vaccine, who are very pro-vaccine and mean to people who didn't want it, were like, I'm better than you, I see it happening on both sides. And it's a little dangerous because there's also this narrative of like, if you did get it, you are unsafe, like you're in danger. Your health is at risk now. You're like, your divinity's at risk or something, you're gonna be like stuck in this system, or like you're a victim of the matrix longer, like you are suddenly plagued with something that people who didn't get it aren't. And I think that is really dangerous to do, the same way that it's dangerous what people who are super pro-vaccine were doing to people who didn't get it and saying, oh, well, you're gonna die, and like nobody feels bad for you. It's the same to me. And it's interesting because I had a very specific experience with wanting to get my vaccines. I felt very strongly in the beginning that I just wanted to get it. And I didn't want to get it for anyone else. I wanted to get it for myself. And everyone in my family, or everyone around me in my immediate family, was like, no, don't get it. Not everyone, but there was a lot of like, no, and nobody had the same passion as me, which wasn't a problem. but I did feel pressure to not get it. But I really wanted to, so much to the point that I was crying about it. And I think I was given that specific experience in order to make sure that I would have balance in my perspective now, and also be able to offer some support to anyone who did get it and is scared spiritually about the fact that they did. What I believe is that no one should be pressured to do anything they don't want to do. And when you do pressure somebody to do something they don't want to do, it's an act of assault and it's not consensual, and so that's violence. And I also think that when you're not informed about what could potentially happen and the spiritual ramifications, you're not responsible, and therefore any of the energy that might have been trying to be pushed onto you, it's not your own. It's a simple act of it not being your own, and you not taking that energy on as if it is your own, and therefore it's not there for you. That's just how I see it. And I was just thinking about that because there's so many readers who I love who have specific perspectives about the jab and the people who didn't get it. And I really understand their anger when it comes to how they were treated, because I felt the same anger. It didn't make any sense. And it was a, It was a violation of human rights, in my opinion, the treatment of people who didn't get the vaccine. But I do see this narrative of, the ones who didn't get it, somehow being spiritually cleaner or something like that. And I think that is it's the same problem that they're battling against. And I don't think it's very helpful. And I think it can even be kind of mean, because some people got it for their health, like me. And I don't think it's because it's a lack of trust or a lack of faith that led you to get the vaccine if you got it in that way. I think that just as you believe in many different creations from human beings that have evolved to help people, you can see the same for medicine. And I don't look at every single vaccine that exists as some type of government ploy. I see many of them as helpful medicines that were created and were gifted to people who were given healing gifts and learned how to create things from the earth or from our intelligence, from wherever, to help people. And I understand the government perspective, and I do believe in a lot of it in terms of the certain agendas, but I don't think it necessarily has everything to do with the vaccine, more so than it does have something to do with the splitting of people and creating these hierarchies when it comes to health and wellness, and making people feel guilty for decisions they made when they were trying to survive a pandemic and were afraid and were trying to protect themselves in whatever way they knew how, And so I just wanted to also bring that perspective in, because I think because of the experience that I had, I was able to get a more balanced experience in terms of the judgment of the vaccine and who has it and who doesn't and all of that. And I truly do think it should be a personal choice. I don't really feel like it should be anything that's authorized, only because I don't know. I think when it comes to your body, it really is your choice. And COVID, I don't know if that was created by people or if that's just a natural thing. I really don't know. But the point is that it's not on... There is community responsibility when it comes to taking care of people and making sure that we're all healthy. But decisions like what you do with your body are very specific. Wearing a mask, I think, is a little different than asking somebody to get something put into their body. And so when it comes to that, I don't know if we should attach ethics to that. It really is a personal choice. And I get it, because I know, people die and people get horrible long-term symptoms and all of these things. There's a lot at risk. It's a very complicated conversation, and I feel like there is no right answer. It really is. It's a gray area. And maybe for some people it's not a gray area. It's very clear. But for me, it's complicated to me because I see both sides. But ultimately, I just don't think anyone should be forced to do anything with their body that they don't want to do. Because when you do that, you also get effects that are you get other effects. You are harmed in other ways, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically. It's not consensual, and so now you have something in your body that you didn't want there, and that's a big deal, you know? So that's how I feel about that. But yeah, I don't believe in the whole you're spiritually cleaner or like your aura is better or like, you know, you're somehow more divine or you're more protected from the matrix or whatever the fuck if you didn't get it. You know, I think you're fine either way, okay? I think everybody's okay, and I think it's really about how you choose to treat people and the compassion level that you have. And that brings me to crystals and things like that. Crystals are beautiful and amazing, and I think that they're awesome. And I was talking a few weeks ago about how I think that all natural like sediment from the earth, I think those are all crystals. I think that right now we place certain things as a crystal and others just as rocks. But when it comes to like the Lemuria stuff and like them putting things into crystals, I think everything that was like a rock was a crystal to them. And so all of that knowledge about like ancient things and keys to the universe and things like that, I think it's all in everything that's like a sediment. Anything that's a rock, I think, has that knowledge. So that's what I think about crystals. And I don't think that you should have to, I don't think that there's pressure. You should feel pressured to buy anything to make yourself more spiritually abundant. You know what I mean? Everything comes from within you. And I am a big believer in the fact that anything you need spiritually when it comes to protection or growth or whatever, you can get from within. You don't need to get anything from an outside source. Things can help. You know, like I went to go do a burning ritual, a burning ceremony. I wrote down a bunch of things I wanted to burn on a piece of paper, and then I burned it in a cemetery. So that's like a little ritual, right? But that comes from within. I don't think you need to necessarily go have anything or acquire anything from outside of yourself to make sure that you are better off spiritually. I think that if that is what heals you and what brings you joy and comfort and love, and that's what feeds your soul, then you should do that. But I don't think it's a matter of someone being better off because they do that versus somebody who just focuses on prayer or just talking to their spirit team or whatever. And I see the same thing with altars, because in the beginning of my spiritual journey, I had a real struggle. I felt a lot of guilt and pressure around making sure I had an altar for my spirit team. And I was scared because I'm living with family, and not everybody is into that type of spirituality. And it makes people uncomfortable and scared, and it triggers things. And I've had reactions. So it wasn't really a safe space for me to have an altar so openly in a way that I thought I needed to have one. And I felt bad because I felt like what I did have to offer wasn't enough. And I don't know, like, it's hard for me because I talk to my spirit team, I talk to my ancestors pretty much every day, but I don't like hear anything back, you know what I mean? It's just me talking, and it's just a feeling that like I feel like they're hearing me. I know that they're there, but it's really a feeling. It's like there's nothing confirmed in the physical really that shows me like they are talking to me. Sometimes I see flashes of light, but you know, there's so many things that make you question yourself. So anyways, all of my spirituality is heavily heavily based on faith and trust and just belief. And so when it comes to that and like offerings and altars and things like that, I've created altars before and done offerings before. But I don't know if that's really what it's all about to me. And I don't think that if you don't have that, or you don't offer up your food openly or something like that, that you're not giving back. I think that giving back is about communicating. You know what I mean? Like I think it's about talking to them. It's the trust, it's the faith that they're there even though nothing's saying anything back. I feel like that's more of an offer of gratitude. And the altar and everything is very beautiful, and offerings are very beautiful. So if you can do that, I think that's amazing too. But I think that's all extra, you know? I don't think it's required. That's what I think. I don't know. I'm still very much so learning every day about everything. But I've never had a dream where like my ancestors were like, give this or create this, you know? I've never had that happen. And I think that when it comes to gratitude, I felt a lot of pressure around that. But I don't know if I believe that that's what it's about. I think it's just about talking to them and being open and honest in your relationship with them and not pretending like it doesn't exist, right? And not ignoring your gut, your intuition, those little messages they send you, and not ignoring the good things that happen in your life, acknowledging it all. I think that's more representative of the gratitude and the giving back, the give and take that they talk about, rather than having to create these physical things. And I think that the physical things are also beautiful and very amazing, and if you can create those, and if you want to, you should. You know, we're human beings. We enjoy having physical manifestations of our love to others. That's why we have children. Our love of others and our love of humanity and spirituality. That's why we have churches and Bibles and all of that. But you don't need anything outside of yourself. And I think your spirit team would feel the same. So I guess this is just a message of not feeling any pressure to reach outside of yourself if you don't feel ready or comfortable, or if you just don't want to. Because if you don't want to, it's probably something you shouldn't do. Because then is it really authentic? You know, if you're not feeling a drive to go do it, you probably shouldn't do it. If you're feeling a drive to talk just openly into the air, you're probably feeling a drive to talk to your spirit team. And that's probably what you should do. But there shouldn't be any pressure to, you know, have all these physical things and offerings. I think the offering it's more emotional, or it's more, you know, it's not tangible. But that's just my perspective. And I could very well just be saying that to make myself feel better. Who knows? Who truly knows? But I don't know. And like I said, every ounce of my spirituality is based off of faith. Every single ounce of it. There's not a whole lot in the physical that is like proof, you know, that I'm actually tapping into something real, other than other spiritual people showing up on my timeline, or me seeing an angel number, you know, or me having a thought and then having that thing happen in real life, which is proof. But you know what I mean? Like, I haven't met my soulmate yet. That's what I mean when I say, right now I'm 100% in faith. That's what I mean. And yet I still feel really connected, and I feel even more connected to my spirit team than I did at the very beginning. And definitely more than I did before this whole thing started. Though I was always connected to my ancestors, I always was wanting to connect to them. I just didn't really openly talk to them. I more so spoke about them rather than acknowledging that they were there and I could speak to them right there in that moment. So that was a shift. And I think it's about the relationship, That's what's important. Building that relationship, which comes through communication with them or being creative with yourself. I think if you're exploring your gifts and tapping into your artsy stuff or whatever brings you joy, you're communicating too. So that's my perspective on it all. But yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. And so I think I'll go now. Bye. Okay, I was also wondering, do you think that the reason why we don't have as many memories from our early life, like our babyhood, 1 year old, 2 years old, like, okay, I'll speak for myself. I don't remember babyhood, don't remember 1, don't remember 2, don't remember 3, maybe I remember 4. And I remember 5, but don't remember early childhood. And do you think that that's because it's because that was mostly our subconscious? So it's not that we don't remember it. Well, it probably is also because we don't remember it because our brains are still developing, and so all that stuff is really early on. But maybe it was also because it was so much was dimmed. The subconscious was dimmed. But do you think the more that the subconscious comes back, the more that you remember that? And is that what shadow work is? It's just uncovering the shadow being early childhood, and basically just getting back the subconscious. That's just what shadow work is. So you begin to gain memories back, and it's not in the way that maybe you have a memory of your birthday at 6 years old, but that's because the subconscious is a different reality than the conscious. So even the way that your memories exist would be different in the subconscious. So you're only remembering maybe feelings or an experience of an emotion, or the visceral trauma. You're remembering something that's intangible. You can't remember images, but the subconscious, it's mostly darkness anyways, right? So there probably wouldn't have been many images, right? There's probably more feelings. So maybe our early childhood isn't about the images. Maybe it's not about what you can see in terms of your memory. Maybe it's just about what you can remember feeling. I don't know. Also, I've seen other people say this, but I just wanted to also say it, that I think we should be a little careful with how many of our gospel songs and just happy songs that we use to talk about our trauma. And only because you don't want to start to associate your happy moments with your trauma, right? You just want to kind of, there's one thing about balance and keeping things and making things as one, and getting things out there and just showing that it's okay to talk about trauma and things like that. But there's also a thing to certain things being sacred, and protection. Protection exists for a reason, and boundaries exist for a reason. And sometimes when you use things that are supposed to fill you up, and you use that to talk about things that are obviously very traumatic to you and are going to be traumatic for other people to hear and read about, and you attach that to something that's supposed to be a sacred space and something good, something happy and joyful, it can be confusing. And I think that even though we might consciously understand, but it's not this, blah, 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 our brains are different beings than us, and the brain is powerful. So you just want to be careful with your association. And that's why I think, sometimes those trends, and mostly on TikTok, with using the gospel songs or the happy songs to talk about something really traumatic. I understand it, I do, but maybe just being a little more careful about it.